Hello, welcome to the show. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm his co-host, Mike Foster.
This is your cloud native video newsletter for an impatient world where we talk about all things security, money, technology, and we've got some pretty cool cloud native tech that Mr. Foster is going to show us later.
Yeah, we're talking Istio this week. Last week we did a demo. Steve did a great demo on Linkerd. So we're finalizing the service mesh wars. We're talking about the Ebpf Foundation that was announced. Talking a little bit about KubeCon and some big spenders, big contracts, and a couple of things that make you go WTF. So thanks for joining the show. Yes, a bunch of stuff this week. Great intro. If you're on,
I know, I'm not used to it.
Yeah, if you're on Twitch, like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, give us a follow, leave a comment. There's a bunch of videos that we clip and release every week. And of course, the links are in the description on YouTube. If you're looking for more information, check that out. Steve, how's your week?
My week has been hectic. I've had to record a whole bunch of talks that I've been doing. I'm going to be, I'm also helping run a meetup, a cooperative DevOps, DevSecOps meetup later in September. If you're in the UK and we'll be in London, you should go to that. First live one ever. First live meetup.
London DevSecOps,
18
right?
months. It's a combination of DevSecOps London and London DevOps. I think between the two of us, we have 10,000 members on Meetup, and we're all going to come together at the London Olympia on the evening of the 22nd. So organizing that and getting speakers, and I've been doing a bit of that today. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Check it out. If you're in London, obviously. If not, there's no online section though, right?
We're not onlining that. We're talking about whether we'll stream it as well. That's just a logistical issue.
Yeah, it does. It does take a lot to live stream something like that. So good luck. Otherwise, yeah, if you're online, if you're in the London area, check it out.
Yeah, something I want to point out though before we dash in, and we didn't talk about this beforehand. We have a Twitter, and I just put a tweet out there that said we're live, and I sent the link out, and I thought, how many people follow us on Twitter? 12. That's how many. Not very many. So if you're looking at the name of the show, that's the name of our Twitter handle. I'm going to pop it in the comments. Please, if you ever watch this, do us a favor, give us a tiny do a tiny favor and follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, somehow that name was not taken on Twitter, so it was a good grab.
Amazing. Yeah, that's why we have this domain. It's available.
Yeah, very nice. All right, should we get into it?
Oh yeah, we can dive straight in
if we want. Into it. Let's dive right in.
All right. Number one on the list. Let me bring my
big news.
Up. Is it big news?
Is it?
That's me. That's you. Where is it? Oh, there we go.
That's you.
Ebpf finds a home. It kind of had a home, but it has a foundation. The Ebpf Foundation, under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation, very much like Cloud Native.
Yep.
And what a surprise. There's a quote by Thomas Graf from Isovalent, the company behind Cilium, with heavy users of Ebpf, and some other diagrams. But yeah.
So what do you think? I'm curious how these things start, because you see Facebook, Google, Isovalent, Microsoft, Netflix, and obviously good friend of the show, Liz Rice, works at Isovalent. So you wonder, is it like a 5-person board to start? One person from each company?
I don't know.
I'm just always curious as to how these things start and grow, because the CNCF obviously been over 6 years now. The CNCF was created, and it's grown. I think the board is 9 people, the TOC chair board. So yeah, it's cool. I think Ebpf has its own home now.
Well, putting my cynical hat on, Ebpf it's a technology. So like CNCF, I get it. Linux is I don't know, it goes beyond being a technology and became like an ecosystem. That ecosystem kind of, for our purposes, became represented by cloud native. We can talk about whatever that means.
Yeah.
And we will. And now we have eBPF. It seems like 50%, oh, that's cool. And then 50%, is this marketing? You know, because it's like it being a foundation really does benefit the organizations that are users of that technology, and it really like pumps it up to a level where is it like Istio Foundation?
Yeah, and it's interesting if you're a user and you want to get into eBPF. It's nice to know who to reach out to, and if they have certain events or meetings or something like that, you can get into the community. But there's also no feedback. It's like if I go into a CNCF or I go into the Kubernetes meetings or the security meetings in Kubernetes that the CNCF runs, I understand where the contributions are being made. Where are the contributions into eBPF as a technology, right? Is it just sort of this? That's why I was saying, is it just sort of this plaque with, hey, there's 5 people on this foundation, all from these different companies who have a say in things? It's like a say in what? I don't
know. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting to see where the contributions are, and I think it's an interesting story to follow going forward, because I'm assuming they make this announcement and then they're going to come up with a structure for some sort of feedback, right, into the product, into the technology.
Well, I mean, what's funny is that and again, it is kind of marketing. The eBPF summit off of ebpf.io, which then sort of is a feeds in or out upstream, whatever, from Cilium, which then, but all of that feeds into Surveillance. So it's having a foundation means you justify the existence of the summit as an independent thing, which was big this year. But it does seem like we commented before that eBPF is like the service mesh, or what was it last year? I don't know. What was it last year?
2018, I think, was service mesh.
Last year was something different.
I think last year was security. Security got hot last year. It was equal security and service mesh in terms of talks. There was both.
Yeah, and diversity. But then it was and then it should be, I don't know. We'll see how. Yeah, right. We'll follow it with benefit of the doubt kind of position for now.
Yeah.
All right. Next,
we have. I kicked you out because we were talking for a while, but we have mutating Kubernetes resources with Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
You want to kick this one off?
All right, I'll kick this one off because I did an interview on my podcast with Jim Bagwadia about Kyverno, because when it sort of started gathering momentum, I was curious about how it differed from OPA, and I got a really good description of it. One of the differentiators in Kyverno was this capability to mutate resources as they move, rather than just block, right? To be able to make little tweaks, which, without really casting a critical eye on that feature, I thought, oh, that's neat. Yeah, maybe I'd want to do that. And he had a few examples of where it might be useful. That obviously, since joining an infrastructure as code-based company, the idea of mutating a resource now to me seems somewhat insane. And now that it's in Gatekeeper, and I rolled through to see, okay, well, what do they mean by this? Just to get an idea, if you go all the way to the bottom, actually, that's the easiest way to do it. Skip to the end. The example they've got is that someone tries to submit a privilege true. Nginx, ding dong, and it's running as privileged false. And here's the rule that reassigns it to false.
Mm-hmm.
And what scared me was that, like, so that's what you get is I submit this, privilege true, done. So now what I thought,
you need a feedback loop, right? You need to go and correct the original resource.
But I'm not being told that it did anything in that line. I just told that I was successful in running, which means if I was privileged equals true, it wouldn't be Nginx. It would be something else, right? Something that needed to be privileged. Mm-hmm. So now I've deployed, and whatever it is I'm doing that needed to be privileged, probably maybe even security, a security tool, suddenly wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know why, and I would have drift between my runtime and my code. So
yes. Yeah, and that's the whole conversation behind behind mutating resources is it's a fickle one, right? It's, do you want the ability to even evict things? Do you just want to monitor and alert? This was a constant conversation even in the PSP alteration, right? When they were changing things with the SIG. So yeah, this is not the, I question the workflow. I question the utility of it and the use case of having something of this sort. Who is using Kubernetes like this? And if they are, it's a pretty big anti-pattern, right? Like, it should either be and for people who are unaware, there is a validating admission controller and a mutating admission controller. One will check the resource against a sort of a template and either say, yes, you're good to admit and to run in the cluster or not. And the other one will slightly tweak specific sections. One of the typical use cases are something like labels. So it'll automatically inject labels or automatically inject Istio right into the YAML file. So that's the use case. If you're changing something like privileged and you're not giving feedback to the user, woof. That's just it's not a good not a good design. I'm assuming that that's not all that. I understand. I think why OPA did it, and I think it's because downstream, all the other projects that use OPA want the admission controller to use for functionality into their applications, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with this first one.
Assign resource metadata. Yeah, and that's the biggest one for that is like Sidecar Architecture or Istio, just to see like, okay, there's the label in this. I'm going to inject a sidecar into this.
There you go. Linkerd is the same.
Yeah, one of the newest tactics that got introduced into not the MITRE framework, but the Windows Kubernetes framework was admission controllers and mutating admission controllers as a vector. So if you're not watching what controllers are in your cluster and somebody goes and creates one and does it not in a secure way, you can inject a lot of things into your workloads. So I think the reason for it was for the downstream projects, all of the Accurix and the different use cases and different downstream projects that wanted it. But if you're just using OPA, this is scary. Let me just say that.
Yeah,
I don't know, for me.
Yeah, I think the problem I have when you're making reference to downstream projects that I want this capability, that's a problem, because the fact that people will hear that it exists because they're just using OPA and they don't know what projects fostered this change, and suddenly they're using it all wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
Using it all wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, one last thing before we go on. Even when we were at StackRox, there's a constant conversation of, you install a security tool, it comes in basically a monitor and alert mode by default. It's not enforcing policy, and you have to go and flip the switch to get that admission controller to go and enforce at runtime. And then even still, it's a validating admission controller. It's basically just looking and saying either this checks out against your policy or we're not letting it run, and we're telling you why we're not letting it run. We're not going and mutating anything. No. It's just from a security standpoint, there is zero use case for mutating and pushing into environments.
Yes.
From a security tool perspective, let me just say that. Unless I'm unaware of one, and in which case, let me know.
Yeah, please, in the comments.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice. Let's finish on that. That was good.
Wrapping it up.
Next one. Yours. You put this in.
Yeah, this was, I think it was a cool project out of Laval School. I'm blanking. So there's a couple authors in there. It's actually just got posted on Reddit yesterday, and I saw it. So I thought it was an interesting resource. Kubernetes autoscaler poster. So it talks about horizontal pod autoscaling, all the different mechanisms that are used there. I think it's a really good sort of outline of the different capabilities, KPAs. So the vertical scaling, cluster auto scaling, especially with the new 1.22 release. they have a lot more capabilities to scale based on memory now. That was always a massive issue because it would scale on CPU, but it really was not that adaptive for memory. So now you'll be seeing some good use cases coming up. Multi-dimensional, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, this one's really interesting, but it looks dangerous.
Yeah, the vertical pod autoscaling one is something I have not seen a use case for in my work, but I'm curious to see who's using that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's well
Probably
summarized.
databases is going to be the vertical pod autoscaling because you're going to want to have you don't want to throttle your database by CPU and memory. So if you have something that's stateful, you're going to want to say, hey, like if you need more CPU, go and take it, and then you throttle the other applications, right?
Yeah,
that's my guess.
Okay. Yeah, good use case.
Yeah. I think I cut you off there. Were you going to say something about the autoscaling?
No, I was just I forgot we were live. I was just going to start talking out loud.
I mean, that's what we're here for. You should talk out loud.
That's our thing. No, that's good. I like it. Thanks for putting that in there because I don't really work in a world where I have to do I have to deploy at that level of scale where I need to, or this is a problem for me. So this is the kind of thing that is helpful for me to sort of see a idiot's guide to auto scaling. I am that idiot.
And kudos to who made it. It's interesting color choice, right? You said it brought you back to the 50s.
We didn't go that. We didn't do that. I can't shrink this one. Maybe I can like this. There we go. There we go. This reminds me when I was a kid. We had a couch that had this similar sort of quilt-like pattern on it. So yeah, it gave me that sort of warm, fuzzy childhood feeling. Oh, well, in there. All right. Moving swiftly along. This isn't exactly a new project. However, this is from my perspective, this is like a plea. I would like somebody to come on our show and show us how this works. Because it's a CNCF hosted open source chaos engineering platform. And it makes it sound simple. It's got 2,000 stars. It's got some great graphics. And I will either try to get this working now that I got my SIBO platform and before I run out of free money on it, or I will fail. But this is on my radar. I think chaos engineering is getting and chaos security engineering as well. Slightly different, but it's getting a lot of great press and uptake. But yeah, I wanted to bring it up. I haven't done anything in chaos engineering. Maybe we could get Jessica back if she's still chaos engineering. She hasn't been on the show.
She hasn't been on the show, but I definitely think she's up for breaking things in Kubernetes. So
that's just what we're talking about. All right, so I just want to bring it up because I really want to play with it. I think it's cool, or we get a guest on the show, so it works.
Yeah, I think there's a couple options.
Yeah,
we do have to figure out what we want to do for the next couple of weeks in terms of demos. So there are options. I think Kubesploit's up there. There was a new tool that was released for basically CIS benchmarks and the NSA hardening guide. Did you see that tool?
Oh, the NSA. Did we not bring up the NSA hardening guide
on the show yet? So I think that's got to come up next week.
All right. Next week we'll do that because it doesn't suck.
Yeah,
that's my short of it.
It was a little late to the party, but it doesn't suck.
No, it's actually pretty cool. All right, we should do it next week for sure. Mental note.
Yeah, next week. Now getting into the things that broke down.
Now what starts with the letter C?
Yo,
you added this? So
yeah. So not a CVE per se, but this was I just love the title. Microsoft Azure Cloud Vulnerability is the worst you can imagine. So thousands of companies using Azure warn their data had been exposed for years. Basically, a engineer, a architect at Wiz found this vulnerability in Microsoft, and it was basically it was I forget what the correct tactic or expression is that MITRE uses, but I think I lost sound. There we go.
You're good.
they managed to get into a VM and get the credentials of basically everybody or all these databases, and then use it to they could view all these different customer databases, make changes.
Mm.
It was basically one of the worst and highest
Unrestricted
impact
access.
CVEs you could get. You basically were able to get into a VM, take the cloud credentials across the cloud, and access databases of companies that you never even knew existed. So
Yeah, the article, something even worse one from an Azure perspective. How we hacked thousands of Azure. This is the Wiz blog. That's
yeah.
talking.
Oh, you found that one
it.
too. Nice.
Yeah. So this goes into a little bit more detail about it. So associated with anybody using Cosmos DB, specifically Cosmos DB, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where the problem is. And they're talking about part one, how to steal the primary keys of Cosmos DB customers. And it goes into how it's Jupyter Notebook related. So there's a vulnerability in the way they added Jupyter as a visualization platform, which then made me think everybody uses Jupyter Notebook.
I'm
as a
not shocked by
visualization
that.
platform.
Jupyter is a fickle application when you're installing it.
Oh, well, there you go. So
yeah,
it's interesting. So you go check that one out too. It's on Wiz's blog. So it's go to wiz.io. Like, it's a new security company. They're going to be shouting about that because they did some interesting work, and well done them.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, fascinating. It was funny. Like, related, I was saying to you earlier, I saw one of the Palo Alto guys doing a talk at Cloud Native London last night. He is an Azure MVP. He's like pretty high up on that list, and he was kind of doubling down as like a security person, saying you can't always rely on your cloud provider, particularly when you're a company that has a level of scale. That line between build it or buy, sometimes it's better to build it yourself and be in control of your security than rely on something like this, because even the big cloud providers can make, well, the worst you can imagine mistakes.
Yeah, luckily there was no impact. I think they found no evidence of anything being tampered with or altered. But yeah, that's one of the big
discovery.
Ones.
Yeah,
good.
I know. It's still bad though.
Still bad. Yes, still very bad. It's actually a good segue into the other things that kind of make you go crazy. And there's a bunch this week. Yeah.
Now, when this came across the radar, did I add this? This came across my radar. It was in a link, like one of the, let's for the purposes of exaggeration, say the thousands of newsletters that come in between the two of us. And I saw the URL securityhub.dev, and that made me go, cool. And then it was titled Cloud Native Security Hub, and I thought, super cool. I'm going to love this. And looked at it and went, these are just Falco rules.
Yeah.
Like, huh? I don't understand. Kubernetes clusters, Nginx rules. This is what? It's, oh, okay. Like, it was not what I expected.
Yeah, it's and I think there's a couple WTFs here. One is the use of the word cloud native, because that thing gets exploited like crazy. The other thing is Cloud Native Security Hub. So what does it mean to be cloud native? If you're on Azure and you have a Windows VM, and something runs and manages Windows VM, and you have let's say a .NET application running there, none of these work. So is it cloud native? Because technically
that's,
or is it just like Falco rules on Linux? If this is just the beginning of sort of a framework for a bunch of like, hey, here are applications, here are Linux rules, here are Windows rules, here are all these different aspects. Cool. But I would say that the title doesn't necessarily match up with the content.
Not even the subtitle. Discover and share Kubernetes security best practices and configurations. From what I can tell, this should say Falco, and that should say Falco. Unless, as you say, they have wider aspirations.
Yeah, the other issue I have with Falco is Falco isn't Kubernetes specific. It's more container specific, right? Like your Falco works, it uses eBPF and a couple other aspects to get runtime alerts and really is quick and fine grained and integrated. And not integrated, I don't think that's the right word, but really useful from a container standpoint. You have to have some sort of integration to the Kubernetes API or YAML files in order to correlate that with Kubernetes, right? Because all Kubernetes is orchestration of containers. So Falco just works at the container level. That's why it just seems misplaced.
Well, okay, so this is it's made by Sysdig. What a surprise, right?
Yeah.
Cloud Native Security Hub. And I think this might have been the original blog that caught my attention. So they are saying that they introduced Falco rule support, but support for other tools will soon come.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just going to have to park our cynicism for now, even though it does look like a giant Falco advert right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest WTF, and we can get into this other conversation of what does it mean to be cloud native?
Well, so we get into some cloud native WTFs.
Well, I just, it's almost like we have the security bingo card. We should just have a cloud native. We should create a cloud native bingo card. Cloud native, Kubernetes, containers.
Oh, we have to do that.
DevOps, right? Just like a basic one. I think we could.
Somebody can make a bingo card for our show, and I guarantee anti-pattern would be on it somewhere.
Anti-pattern supply chain would probably be one.
Yeah. All right.
Moving on.
So we're gonna hit cloud native in 2 seconds. I'm gonna make fun of KubeCon now with our next WTF, and it is the announcement of the number of co-located events that happen usually like the day before KubeCon, or like maybe 2 days, a day and a half. It's always on Monday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday, I think.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, there's some too. Well, I'm gonna zing to the bottom because I've already gone up and down this, and it's more fun when you go from the bottom. So you can already see how many I'm doing. Oh, some sponsors. Other sponsors are available. So okay. So it's Monday and Tuesday. There's some Monday there, but there's the idea: it's getting ridiculous. Supply chain security con. One day. A lot of money, right? Let's go up. Service Mesh Con, next day, a lot of money. PromCon, kind of like the sound of that. Prometheus Con, one day. One day means you're a con. Credit to OpenShift Commons Gathering for deviating. The only one that's a gathering. I guess Common Con would confuse people when you get people showing up just like Batman.
That's
and then we get into production identity day. That's weird. That's a day.
A day.
A summit. Only one day. Cheaper. Turns out a summit is much cheaper than a day a con. KubeCycle, that's virtual, so that's probably free. Yeah, that's not happening. Okay, we can accept that. Summit. Day. Cons are expensive.
Yeah.
Envoy Con. I told you that was coming.
But
this is crazy.
Con, summit, day, gathering.
Data on Kubernetes day. Still only a day. That one's free. What the hell? How do you decide if you're a summit, a day, or a con? And does it affect the price? I don't know.
All right, if you were going to write the rules, how would you define these? Like, one day is a day, obviously.
WASM. I mess up a cloud WASM.
Yeah, WebAssembly.
It's just fun to say. It's funner to say WASM. I don't know. I think a day sounds like nice. A day, it should go day, con, summit. Summit's got to be the summit.
Yeah.
Right?
I think Summit is 2 or more days at a single location where everybody's like staying, to me.
Yeah, it's a summit. And a
Yeah.
con as well.
I-
Because they're not days.
To me, a summit is more of like you go and rent out the hotel and you're there for 3 days and everybody's
Yeah.
staying in the hotel.
And you're making changes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, con is a gathering.
con
a
is
couple
means you're
days.
just gathering because you're socializing. That's a couple days.
Yeah.
And a day is like a mini con.
Yeah, it's a single day. So like
But all of
I
these
think
days, they're all days.
exactly. Like I think it should just be like Ebpf day, but it just doesn't have the same ring to it, so they just change it. And that's I'm like, what's the
How can I charge $250? Make it a con.
yes.
And,
Yeah,
and
it's just
piggyback on.
it has to have a good ring to it, and then you're in the money.
All right. So if anyone, now that we've done this, we are never going to be CNCF ambassadors.
Yeah, there's no shot.
It's never
This is
gonna
not a. It is.
We ruined
It's-
it.
Yeah, it's just part of the show. So
What is
on to
cloud
the
native
next one.
anyway, though?
Yeah.
Why does it matter to us? All right. So, are you part of this?
Yeah, I'm a
deliberations,
contributor. I've been slacking. I'm sorry, Catherine. I owe you a big apology. I've been slacking on the definitions, and been super busy with the new transition. So, but yeah, I brought up the what is cloud native because Cloud CNCF has been working on a Glossly partially because of all of the, and it was interesting too because it came out of the marketing business value group, and the marketing business value group wanted to define these things so that it was beginners could come in and actually get a feel for these terms. And I think a lot of it has to do with them being abused. And these new technologies come up and some marketing guru somewhere comes up with a new term for it, and then it sticks and it's misused for 3 years, and then we finally settle on the term and it gets written in the glossary. So
should I click this?
Yeah, sure. It was released at the last KubeCon. So the first release, I think it had 25 definitions, and since then they've expanded a bunch, and there will be an update at the new KubeCon. I think so it was
so what does it say cloud native is? Can I find that?
So there's cloud native application right there. So what it is, there isn't a cloud native because again, it needs a, what's the word for it? It needs to be applied to something. Like you can't just say like, oh, it's cloud native.
Right. Okay.
How do you define that? Is it an application? Is it networking? Is it physical? Is it a fluffy white thing that hangs in the sky? Like I don't know what cloud native means, right? So you need some sort of. It sounds
like you were born there somehow, but yeah. I feel like it was easier. It was easier a few years ago because you're either in the data center or you weren't in the data center. And if you were not in the only startups were truly cloud native because they never had a data center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and each cloud decided they wanted to use the term cloud native in their own way, which made it complex because it's like what's cloud native to AWS versus Azure? What's cloud native to GCP? Right? Because they all have different platforms. They all run different versions of Kubernetes. So even though they're taking Kubernetes, they have different patches that they themselves write into it, right? So, the term. So I think if you go to the cloud native application, what was decided on was it was something that is native to the cloud that it runs on, can be brought up and supported on that cloud. Right. So if you're in Azure and something is integrated and works with Azure services and tends to have sort of this declarative, scalable, and repeatable deployment functionality to it, we said that's cloud native. Right. Something that it's like a managed platform, you put it up there and you get the benefits of all of this underlying software and architecture to then prop up your application.
Got it.
That was what we decided on.
So some crappy lift and shift that they whack into a container and they stuff into Fargate, not cloud native.
Well, technically it is.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's taking advantage of containerization and
taking
auto
cloud software, right?
provisioning, and yeah,
Yeah.
I guess
Even though your application
well,
sucks.
the it still makes it pretty wide.
And you couldn't narrow it down further without picking on specific cloud providers too, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't go Kubernetes because there are people who don't use Kubernetes, even though like a lot of it's Kubernetes under the hood, right? Or a different type of container runtime. You still can't call that out because there are other things that don't need Kubernetes to run, right? And then are we, right. Yeah, so it's like, are we singling out Docker to say, hey, like you're using Docker Swarm, that's not cloud native? No, an application doesn't make something cloud native. How you use it does, right?
Right.
But yeah, again, it's like so broad. So when you see things that are, hey, it's cloud native security, what is cloud native security? And part of it is if you're not defining your terms when you're introducing them, I just think like you're taking advantage of the lack of definition, let's say, right?
You know what this reminds me? And I'm going to totally misquote this, but we get to do a name drop by doing it. When we were at the same place, when we were launching a certain, let's say, open source tool or something that we were trying to solve a problem and feeding that out to get opinions throughout the cloud native industry, if I could say that. A certain, I think it was Kelsey Hightower, who I don't know, who knows how we got him to comment on anything that we would even be close to.
Yep.
He said something like, if you don't define it, people will define it for you.
Yep.
And that is the problem with not having this glossary. And how people would just whack cloud native. As soon as cloud native has momentum, and it clearly does, because everybody wants to bolt a con summit or day on the front of cloud native and KubeCon. That means it's cool. Then you're going to get cloud native breakfast cereal. We're going to get cloud native food.
As long as it's kind of like Lucky Charms. If it's like a cloud native breakfast cereal, but there's marshmallows in it, I'm sold. I'm good.
No, obviously I'm going to buy it and eat it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it becomes marketing more than substance.
Yeah. The whole you need to define it for you is one of the biggest tellers, because if something is clearly articulated and defined, and just from marketing, from a website, if I understand your product and it's well articulated and simplified with the littlest use of, let's say, the bingo card, then I assume that I have this assumption that it works better than you're telling me. I think the more fluffy language, the more I think you're overselling it with these words. But I also have a bias because you work in the industry for that long and you kind of see in the background, you're like, is this what it is?
Yeah.
Does it really working. Do what you're saying it does?
Yeah.
Anyways,
nice.
Big giant WTF there.
Thanks for the intro to the glossary, though, because I knew you were working on it, but I hadn't given it much mind, probably arrogantly thinking I knew what these things mean, but maybe I don't.
Yeah, marketing business value. CNCF has its own Slack channel. If you want to join, if anybody's watching, do really cool work. So check it out. They have, we're meeting every month, I believe in the third week of the month. And again, it's all public knowledge. You can go check it out.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Right. Here we go. Next. I have a feeling I added this a while back, but you have the best comments on it because I'm going to let you tackle it.
So how many cloud services are there?
Yeah.
And Kubernetes is not the only cloud service you're going to have. So I just don't understand why people continue to want cost of managed comparisons. Well, sorry, I understand why from a business standpoint you want some sort of cost managed comparison, but it really is not even a fair evaluation, right?
No.
They're not really charging you on Kubernetes. They want your CPU workloads to get pumped into Kubernetes so they can upcharge you on all the other services that they have, right? Like data transfer and all the different databases and data analytic tools. So it's I'm shocked by the continuous thought of like, hey, we need to evaluate Kubernetes services and just the Kubernetes service. And then it's like, okay, well, are you using GKE Autopilot? Are you using any of their logging tools? Right? There's so much more in this ecosystem. So to just do something like that where I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And the basis for calculation, 20 nodes together. So, and then they're comparing the price of that, which is like to compare, can take a developer perspective, right? DigitalOcean, which is the one on the end, if you don't know what Docs is. DigitalOcean like markets itself as Kubernetes for developers. I don't even really think I would argue that it's not even designed for production. It's designed to be cheap, but it's super easy. And for somebody learning Kubernetes, it's a great first place to go. And it doesn't cost that much. So like at small scale, I would actually bet that these numbers would be a huge advantage for DigitalOcean. But then at the scale they're measuring it, it actually kind of looks bad in comparison with GKE. So I'm like, is this, I don't know. It's just yet another nuance, right? Where is it correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it also depends on the node. It depends on what you're trying to do with it. There's a bunch of different options for like, if you want like GPUs or specific workloads and excuse me, if you're just going to go on a regular set workload, again, like you can price for the basic use case very differently and then upcharge on the other aspects too, right? So I just don't see how it's applicable to anybody other than like a startup of 7 or 10 people that are just starting with Kubernetes, right?
Yeah. Right.
And really most of your costs are going to come from the integration of other applications anyways. Like when you're talking about big company issues, it's okay, authentication. How do we manage 1,000 users on our cloud platform, right? Like those are the big questions. And you're going to burn so much money onboarding people and getting people up to speed with the cloud platforms than you are on a Kubernetes service. At least that's my understanding. So
compare even this comparison where I was saying it was too big if you were a developer to what we talked about last week in that tweet from Pinterest where they were looking at $3.5 billion in commitment with AWS or what it was.
Oh, that's like, coming up. That's coming up. We haven't talked about that.
Oh no, we haven't done this week. Oh my God. All right.
Yeah. It's been a long week.
Spoiler alert.
We had a time move and we're just all discombobulated, but we have one burn on VMware coming up first before we get to the money.
The thing I just ruined.
Yeah.
One more burn.
Yeah, Red Hat buddies up.
This is why this got in.
Do you want to take this one?
Yes, I did add it because it's in the register.
Oh, you did.
Did I show you that? Which is reputable, I guess. And it said, plays with Nutanix to provide an escape route from VMware. I just think it's funny when that kind of headline makes it into the world, because if I'm VMware, I really don't like that because it assumes people want to escape from VMware.
It is hard to escape from VMware, though, and with their credit.
Yes, it is credit. So that if you haven't got an escape route, then that is there, and you want to get away from what they're doing in that world and get something into Nutanix and OpenShift. Actually, this is technically I can throw the baton back over to you because there's even a mention of Stackworks Kubernetes security. There's all sorts of
look at that
plugs for.
I didn't write this one. So
no, I know this isn't even a self plug, but it is interesting that I don't know if there's any buzz internally. Can you give us any insight about the Nutanix collaboration at all, or is this just an interesting? Is it an interesting way out of VMware? What is not meant to be derogatory, but a legitimate problem if you did want to do that?
Yeah, in terms of inside, honestly, I think Red Hat is it's pretty open as a company. So a lot of it is just, if you want to run VMware, some of our major accounts are OpenShift on VMware, right?
Right.
There's Red Hat will provide you either, if you want the virtualization layer, you can get the virtualization layer. If you want OpenShift, you can just get OpenShift. If you want some of the open source tools, you could do that as well. There's a lot of flexibility in it, and so it's just kind of like I think people come to Red Hat and they say, hey, well, we need an alternative if we want to, we like OpenShift, let's say. We need an alternative for our infrastructure, for our virtualization layer. Do you have one, right? Do you have a hosting platform? Do you have these other options? And so part of it is, if people want to get out, we're going to pair up with a company that will allow it. VMware also doesn't necessarily, like, we're partners with VMware and we supply OpenShift, but I don't know if that relationship is the best. We are somewhat competitors, so there are options. That's my WTF / weird thing is, there are options out there.
There are options, yeah.
Yeah.
If you need to get out of this pickle called VMware. All right. Now, new section?
Yeah, because you brought it up, but there is some big money. No acquisitions, but one of these guys coming up.
All right, I just dropped this straight into it. This is a tweet from Ben, and I'm going to ruin his name. Let's go with Schechter, if he's German. From the latest Pinterest filing. Wild. Yes, we entered into a new private pricing addendum with Amazon Web Services, which governs our use of cloud computing infrastructure by AWS. Under the new pricing addendum, we are required to purchase at least 3,250 million, or 3.2 billion, of cloud services until 2029. If we fail to do so, we must pay the difference. So far, our remaining contract is 3.1 billion, but we expect to meet our commitment.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's massive.
And then the comments make it even better.
Yeah, I was going to point out that Corey Quinn obviously commented, a point that will be missed here is Pinterest isn't buying 3.2 billion of AWS cloud services. They're buying 3.2 billion after whatever they got discounted. So
I can't even find Corey's. So there's so many comments on here. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. After the significant discount, well, he said probably 5 to 10 billion. I'd believe that.
In
They're getting
retail?
more than 50% off.
Yeah.
I would expect that if I were going to spend 3 billion on AWS with a almost 10-year contract, I would have some negotiation leverage.
Yeah, somebody else. And Ben also commented, the more wild point. So we're still digging into this one. The deal averaged out to 400 million a year, which represents less than 1% of AWS's revenue based on Q2 annualized run rate.
Right. Yeah.
1%.
1%.
Less than 1%. It seems like a massive amount of guaranteed money to AWS.
Yes. I don't know. My brain doesn't operate at that scale.
Yeah. That's definitely for a lot of foresight to think 8 years.
8 year, whatever. Like having worked in technical sales and seen contracts get negotiated, trying to get someone to commit for 3 years, people, doing cartwheels out of that deal.
Yeah.
8 years. I don't know what it's like to be in a sales role at AWS.
I mean, you'd love to be in a sales role inking that deal, right?
I might own a boat or something if I had that kind of deals going. Those kind of deals going on. Anyway, that's amazing. That's a little bit of insight into the kind of money flying around.
Yeah, and there's one last thing before we jump into Istio. It's been a little bit of a long show, but appreciate anybody still watching. Grafana has reaches a 3 billion valuation. So another unicorn, kind of.
I feel like there must have been a unicorn before this, but to get another round, it's 220 million.
Yeah.
Led by Sequoia and another company I have trouble saying, Co2 Management. But I mean, their existing investors are awesome. Still, Lightspeed, and which I think is Microsoft, and Lead Edge, GIC. Like, that's what happens when you get to 3 billion. I mean, we had some comments before when people are saying, "Oh, we're now worth $1 billion. We're $1.5 billion." Very difficult to be acquired at that point. Maybe you have to go public, something like that. But I don't know. I don't question that. Grafana, yeah, everyone uses it. Everyone loves it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I wonder who would buy them out. I think they might IPO.
Yeah, that something like that makes sense, doesn't it? But it's it's
and they'll put cloud native on their dashboard.
Of course, yeah, they say cloud native, and that's it.
Yeah,
then they'll get some real money.
Yeah, and if you're watching and you want from last season, the last version, we did a little Grafana and Prometheus breakdown, so you could check that out if you're interested in seeing how to set up Grafana and how it works. I've always been a big fan of Grafana. It's a very, very useful dashboard with a lot of integration, so pretty cool.
It's super easy in combination with Prometheus, but it's super easy even if you don't do that. You just add so many data collectors. It's great.
Any data, visualize it in the dashboard. They have a bunch of cloud hosting services that are available. I think they're going to get into like the managed service aspect to it. But yeah, really cool, really easy to set up, and it's all declarative too. So if you set up a dashboard, you save it, you can save the dashboard, port it over to somewhere else. Share it.
It's all marketplace. I get all my dashboards from the marketplace.
Yeah, which is it's awesome. And watching the way people set up their dashboards, I'm a big fan of that ability to share. It's like kind of like OPA rules. You can see what other people are doing, and very useful.
All right. Now I'm excited because it's over to you.
Yes. Do you know what time it is?
Does everybody know what time it is?
Yes. All right. So if you were around last week, if you missed the show, check it out. Steve did an excellent demo on Linkerd, and now we're going to get into Istio. So for those of you who are unaware, there are kind of 2, maybe 3 heavyweights in terms of the service mesh. You have Linkerd, you have Istio, and then I believe Console would technically be considered a service mesh. Is it?
Let's say yeah.
Yeah, we'll say yes, just for the sake of me continuing my rant. So Sidecar Architecture, just for people who are unaware, if you go into Istio, you go into the docs. Istio is a little bit of a, let's say, user interface for the Envoy proxy. So Envoy proxy gets injected as a sidecar, pulls a bunch of metrics of your application, and then reports it back to Citadel. I believe Citadel is the UI, Galley is the database. Don't quote me on that. But if you want to know exactly about the architecture, it's all here in the docs. We talk about all of the aspects of Envoy. And it was originally created as a collaborative project between Google and IBM. It's pretty interesting. So Google and IBM originally created it. I don't believe it was Kubernetes specific. It was somewhat of a, I think, container. I think it was more container focused originally, but it's written in C++. So if you're around for Linkerd, Linkerd is written in Rust. This is written in C++. Istio is a little bit more heavy than Linkerd, but I'm not going to do any performance benchmarking. So that's just what I've seen from the other benchmarks that are out there.
It's also one of their taglines on Linkerd, I mean.
Yeah, that's true too. But yeah, so Istio basically uses the Envoy proxy. And then just collects it and builds a ton of functionality into it. Now, what is pretty awesome, if you want to go to getting started, Istio has its own CLI. So you can download Istio, basically export it, add it to your command line, and then Yeah, there's this awesome demo right here. Are you taking a photo of me? I saw that.
I am, yeah. I've never taken
Nice.
it. This is kind of a cool setup for Twitter.
Yeah. So Istio CTL install set profile demo. So there are a couple different profiles and things that you can install. So Istio core, Istio D gets installed, egress, ingress. It does install Grafana and Prometheus as well for the demo profile. And it has a sample application. And this sample application gets installed into the default namespace where you then, so here's what we're applying all of the book info gateways. And then what we are going to do, so this is the Kali dashboard. Wait, where do we inject it? Oh, here it is. So kubectl label namespace default Istio injection equals enabled. And basically any application that gets put into the default namespace is going to go through a mutating admission controller. That metadata is going to get a little fix, and then a sidecar is going to get injected. Istio has admin permissions to go and create a sidecar next to whatever pods that you create. And you have to do this before deployment too, right? This is one of the interesting things. If you delete a namespace and then you bring up an application and then you change it, it will not mutate existing resources. It will only do it on, it does make sense. But in terms of a lot of workflows, like a lot of Helm charts, a lot of automation, a lot of CD deployments, right? Like if you have these auto deploying aspects, it does change a lot, because if you look at namespaces as sort of this wall, a lot of people like to just have a Helm chart and then just say, okay, delete namespace. And then just when you delete the namespace, it wipes all the resources. Well, you can't really do that the same way, right? Because when you bring it up, you have to bring it up, auto inject it, create the rule, and then bring in your application. So just a little bit of a workflow change. I don't want to say anti-pattern, because it's not an anti-pattern and we have a bingo card that we need to create, but yeah, just slightly different aspects there. So
okay,
I didn't use the application that they gave, because I was like, oh, let's try to keep things, the same as last week. So of course we have our socks. And for anybody watching, if you want to go check out that IP address, you can go and see if you can break the web application. It's public. And I have a little load balancer running against it as well. Not load balancer, just a little application running in the background, checking the paths and creating some traffic to the application. But yeah, I got 2 items in my cart. I'm feeling colorful today, so let's get a couple of those. Ooh, well, I'm not going to do that for you guys.
Yeah, I just had a credit card now.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a Kanye sock. It's a little holy. Maybe your Sunday socks for $100. And
DIY that.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Istio needs a dashboard to showcase all of this information. Kiali is a open source dashboard to do that. If you're using something like Google, they have a Anthos specific dashboard to visualize Istio components. But yeah, so if you go in, if you want to check out Linkerd, it's something similar. Now, this took a while for the graph to show up like this. Just if I were to do last minute, I believe, it still holds the structure. But when I was first starting this, it was all over the place, because until it figures out all the paths and all the requests, you don't get this succinct, well-ordered structure. So it was interesting. This thing keeps popping up. I don't know why this happens. It just ships over here and then pops up over here. But my biggest complaint is you can't move these around.
Okay, so if it's messy, you can't. You want to? Do you need to?
Yeah, do we need to? I don't know, but yeah, it's just certain views. I'm just kind of like, what is the point of this view?
Oh, this is like the criticism I had of Linkerd view last time. I wanted to click on it. I wanted to click on it and get lots more information, and it just wasn't happening the way I expected. I
will say, so I do kind of like the way they visualize these components. The triangle is a service, and the square is the application itself.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, so you can say, oh, we have traffic into the front end service. Here's your total. Here's your success rate. Here's your error rate.
Oh, I
We
completely
can look.
missed that. That's changing. Oh, when you click on that, you do get additional information over there.
Mhm. Yeah,
Ah.
and so I can go and click on front end, and you can see the type of request that's made between them. So you could say, oh, it's HTTP, request traffic, request per second. There's the error rate, response time. This is the last 10 seconds too. So it is refreshing pretty regularly. It's going and pulling all these metrics pretty often. I can just say, okay, let's do every 5 minutes. Right. It just depends on, it's kind of like a Grafana dashboard. How often are you scraping, Istio D? I forget which one's the database, but which component in Istio is the database. But yeah, you're going and scraping for all the information. And what we can do is we can go into the details of this service. And we can look at the endpoints, we can look at the ports, the users, the inbound traffic, request per second, percent success, and the metrics as well. So this is a pretty in-depth dashboard for Istio. Like there is a lot of aspects here: request volume, duration, size. Obviously, it's not using gRPCs, so that won't be there. TPC received and sent is there. Yeah, there's a lot. So what I found really interesting was the services aspect and how this configuration is here. So we can sort by health, and we can see that there are a couple of aspects that I haven't necessarily, there's not enough information there for me going to like the cart or anything like that for it to give me a green check. But we could say, hey, go to front end. Let's see what's going on. We have a 1% error rate, and maybe that's in the yellow. That's not what we like. And what we can do is we can say we can create different rules into the services. So we can have request routing. We can add a route rule. Request matching any request. So specific requests, we can say, hey, don't go to this specific service, go somewhere else. And we can inject faults, so we can add delays. So if you want to do a little bit of chaos engineering and you're in the dev environment and you're running a load and you're saying, hey, the front end's not really keeping up with the amount of load that we're giving it, that we're testing it out with, maybe we add some faults in and see how it handles it, right? Request timeouts. We can set up gateways, traffic policies, circuit breaker rules, all for that specific service. And really, this is the massive benefit of a service mesh, is you have such fine-grained network control over an individual service in an individual container, right? There's that sidecar architecture allows that. Now, it's not the only architecture that you can set up. You could do something like what Citrix does, which is you set up a type of Envoy, like their own version of what Envoy proxy does, and it's just a single one on a node. It's deployed like a daemon set, and it measures all this traffic, just not at the individual container level. That architecture is okay. The trade-off has a real Argo CD vibe. Looks good. Yeah. Oh, Jason's watching. Yeah, it's this is also Kali too. So I've seen Anthos. Anthos has a very similar functionality when they have it set up and they're pulling the Istio configuration and details. But I found it almost too overwhelming. Because here's what's the use case for it. The use case is you want to get super fine grained with your network controls. So, okay, well, that's a very mature thing to get to in Kubernetes. Like you're at the point where you have a complete grasp on your deployment cycle and everything's in production, and now you just realize you're at you have a couple too many request issues and you need to change it, or you want to do some sort of specific routing. So I'm wondering the use case for that. The other aspect is I just don't find, when you're working with microservices at this scale, I don't find it intuitive. I think the metrics and the information is really useful to go and make a decision with your developers as to how you're architecting your application. But I don't think I would make changes through this dashboard. I don't think I would go and create services like this. I don't know, just me. I would want to, I mean, maybe if it was giving recommendations, it wouldn't be too bad, but it just wouldn't be the workflow that I choose. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on your end, Steve?
No. That's kind of why I wanted to do this comparison, because it's just a little bit like I have yet to see. Well, we've kind of talked about this before. There's so much going on here, and I think the key word you said was maturity. Is like somebody getting to the point where this, like, they're really getting deep into this. I hope we get to a point where this is the abstraction layer upon which we are operating. That'd be good. It's almost a little bit ahead of its time, but I don't know. That's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I think it looks cool.
I mean, this is why the service mesh wars of what, 2018, 2019 at KubeCon were so big. It was the new shiny toy that came out, and everybody was
They were the
over the
jingly
moon with
keys,
it.
weren't they? Ooh, look at the
Yeah.
shiny.
Listen, it is really cool, and I believe that so unhealthy
brain
nodes. There's a lot here.
Like, my brain is now thinking, like, what happens if you install Cilium underneath Istio, and now you've got an eBPF layer managing and observing security with really make it complicated and put Istio on top. No reason why that wouldn't work.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. I think the other really useful, and I kind of overlooked this too as a use case, you can see how users move through your application at such fine-grained detail, right? You could see where a lot of the load gets placed. You can watch people as they come in and go front order to order, and you can control as your users go through, and you see what the workflow that they like. You can, set up rules or create resources there to move them through it, right? Like if you realize that, I mean, I can't really do it with this sock shop, but like, let's say you're Netflix and people come through and you want to A/B test. Well, you have a very, very useful way of setting that up, of setting two applications and then just weighting the difference of people going through. So, and then getting all the information from that. The biggest question I have is performance, right? So one, can you even deploy it into production at scale without slowing down?
Mm-hmm.
And then two, this is a lot of information. So I'm assuming that this is going to be pretty heavy on the system.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that makes sense.
You're installing this and you're going to probably install this on a managed service platform. It's probably going to be like an XKS or an OpenShift or a Tanzu or something like that, because not a lot of people, I'd say I haven't heard of a use case where somebody's managing their own Kubernetes system and using open source Istio, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just the work involved. So you want push button Istio.
Yeah.
If at all.
I mean, I think that's what Anthos tried to accommodate, right? It's, hey, we're going to sell you Anthos. Here's Istio, but we're going to support it. And then they realized that supporting Istio for a multi-hybrid platform was a lot of work. Just getting the Google version of just getting GKE on-prem was a lot.
Yes. So the question, I think I said I had a question before we started this, and I was going to hold back. So the thing that I saw that I was really keen about, and actually you have touched on it, is like doing sort of blue-green deployments or canary deployments at scale. This can be helpful for that. But that seemed like a pretty nuanced part of this, like, and not the obvious functionality that I'd heard about. I didn't know if you heard about, if that was something there's no way you would have got into that in this demo, but that seemed like something that maybe wasn't available on Linkerd. And if we do have someone watching that can clear that up, that seemed like a pretty interesting extra perk for this because of the way you're monitoring and crossing traffic over into something. If this helps with that, that's cool. I just didn't quite understand out of the box how it did that.
I do
To me,
like
it's just-
these. Yeah, the logs. All. I mean, it's just really in terms of bang for your buck information. It's really great. You can get
Yeah,
click on a service, click on a workload, and then you can go through and really get fine grained with it. The amount of information here is significant.
Yeah. The Linkerd dashboard was all right, but this Kali looks like next level. It's funny, when I first heard of Kali, I saw it advertised as service mesh visualization. I thought, oh, this is really cool. And it's like, but it only works with Istio? Well, it's not. Cloud native visualization. It's just one thing, actually. I think it's only Istio, isn't it?
That's
It's just
a good question.
Istio.
There's so many tools. I mean, Istio uses Envoy, right? So it's like, is Istio?
Oh, maybe it's, yeah.
It's like 3 open source projects in one, right? There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is good. It looks crazy. I'm happy you did this one and I did the other one.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I'm glossing over too. Like you have Istio routes. There's a bunch of different configurations that you can set up. And there was a problem apparently. So
okay, yeah, it's demo.
I just didn't like that. But yeah, like this is and this is a simple application. There's other ones that they have on their website if you want to check it out. The getting started. I mean, I don't know how simple Linkerd was. It's one thing I haven't tested on my cluster, but getting started with Istio was fairly simple. Istio CTL was useful. You install it wherever you have your kubeconfig file, and it goes and injects all the applications, all the basically similar to Linkerd, right? Goes and changes the metadata and then injects the sidecar. So
yeah, sounds very similar.
Yeah, I think in terms of setup, it is. So yeah, there you go. Next steps. So congratulations, you've installed your demo. Here's the next things you want to check out. Traffic shifting, fault injection, request routing. This is probably the thing that I would focus on is what are the deployment best practice and what are the requirements? There's a...
Yeah. I think it looks really, really thorough. And I think we once talked about service meshes as people just wanted MTLS or something like that. And then they would go down the path of Istio and it's like sledgehammer to crack a nut kind of scenario.
Yeah, there was a I wonder if it's like a legal requirement and there are people who, hey, you need to have encryption between services, and I go, well, we can't run containers then, we can only run virtual machines, and then the requests have to come out encrypted. And yeah, I see the use case, and that really is one, because you have that sidecar architecture, you can encrypt all the traffic. That's very heavy though, and you think about it too, because I'm still showing my dashboard. Oh no, I moved away from the architecture. Where'd it go? I don't know. Anyways, so there it is. Yeah, because you think about it. So you have, microservice A, microservice B. You're going out to the proxy. It's getting encrypted. It's going over to the proxy. It's getting decrypted, and then it's going to the container. I remember when we first did an evaluation 2 or 3 years ago when I was working at CloudOps, it was 6 milliseconds extra for each jump. So you think about it like 6. This was a couple of years ago. We did an evaluation for a company who, for that reason, was looking to implement a service mesh, and we're just like, there are better ways to do this. You do not need that sort of time. So I think that's why something like Linkerd, I think the lightweight aspect matters so much more. It just gets say if you're running in production, I'd almost say that being lightweight and simplified version is probably a better introduction to a service mesh to get it up and running.
Yeah, and then figure out what it's missing and what it is
Yeah.
you really cannot do before you decide to go with the tank and roll in with something that big. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think in the from coming from the security angle, when people think like service mesh, it sounds good to them, right? Because of the encryption, etc. And then they start looking at what are the security possibilities associated with Istio, and we used to hear like, oh, I can do layer 7 rules. Oh, that appeals to me as a security professional.
Yeah.
Therefore, I want it, without really considering, the actual overheads in terms of just understanding the labor, potential to get it wrong.
Yeah, you have a mutating admission controller in the cluster, right? There's there's a little bit of a trade-off there, and especially like if you have something that's heavy that's slowing people down or it's going to bring production down, there's just a lot, and so I feel like unless it is a very well oiled service mesh, you're trading one problem for another. But again, I haven't had that. I haven't had to implement a service mesh or run it in production. Basically, all dev clusters. So it's if anybody's watching that wants to talk about use cases and all that stuff, let me know.
Same person as last time. We'll get you on the show. That was good. I think was at the end because that was a great demo. And that actually lined up pretty nicely with what we saw last week in terms of a head-to-head. So cool. We've done it. We've ticked Istio off. And we even had, because we had Liz on the show and we tricked her into doing a bit of Cilium. So if you can go way back and watch that show as well, not too bad.
Yeah, we really should clip that one.
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Just the demo.
Make that up. Yeah.
That's what we'll do. We'll do a little see which dashboard everybody likes better.
Yeah. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll see when that clip goes live.
Yeah, awesome.
Otherwise, I think we're done. That's the longest show ever.
Yeah, longest show ever. It's we move the show and then we talk too long. That's what happens. Normally it's Friday. Yeah. We're in and out. It's an hour. And now we're just droning on. So
all right.
Any thoughts? Yeah, let's wrap it up. Cubesploit next week.
Really?
I'll take Cubesploit next week. Why not?
Jackpot.
Let's check it out. Oh, unless you want to do it. Oh, jeez.
Tell you what, we'll see what kind of time we've got. One of us will have it ready.
All right. And next week, Thursday, we're sticking with the Thursday time for everybody at home.
But not this time. We're going to go with 4 p.m. Thursday repeat. And that's because, I'm a moron, because I was saying that as we start to unlock, people won't have Fridays at 4 or 5 available. They'll either be in the pub or if they have a long weekend, they'll be gone. And then I looked at the rest of my September calendar and I'm gone for almost every single Friday. I'm like, yeah.
He'll be in the pub or doing vacation, just like he said.
So Thursday now, a more sane day, your last hour of your Thursday, hopefully if you're in the United Kingdom, or your pre-lunch, we'll call it.
Yeah.
In your domain,
brunch.
And then just before work if you're in the Pacific. So spread the word.
Yeah, Thursday spread the word. 4. And as always, you can catch everything on YouTube. We upload a bunch of cool stuff, all like snippets and anyways, check it out. There's a ton of information, all the links from the show. And again, if you want to see specific demos, shoot us a message, Twitter, emails. It's all exactly spelled as written for the show. So I'm not saying it. You can say it, Steve.
All right. Thanks for watching. My name is Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster. Take care.
See you next week.